Fact number 5. The apostles suffered and died because of their teachings on the resurrection.
This isn't true either. Again, I highly suggest Paulogia's work on this. He's done a lot of great research into what can we know about the deaths of the apostles and how many apostles were most likely needed in order for Christianity to start up and be created. I believe Paul comes to just 2 apostles. That would be Peter and Paul. Those were obviously 2 apostles. James was also an apostle, James the pillar. But anyways, it only really needed Peter and Paul. Now, were Peter and Paul killed because they were preaching about the resurrection? No, they weren't. We don't have any kind of good information about why they were killed or even how Peter was killed. We do know that Paul ended up being killed, but it's not because they were preaching about Jesus or anything like that. And also, they weren't given a chance to repent of anything. This particular fact has no bearing whatsoever on the resurrection. Just like all of these points so far, there's been five points. None of them matter as far as the resurrection goes. It doesn't matter if the apostles actually did. Let's assume they all died because they were preaching about the resurrection. That doesn't prove that Jesus actually resurrected. It has no bearing on it whatsoever.
You can't get around that fact. The apostles went everywhere preaching the resurrection, and when they did, they ran into opposition on every level. With the Jewish community, with the Roman leadership, and not only was it just opposition, but the apostles suffered, they were tortured, and they died for preaching on the resurrection. In fact, all they would have had to do to keep that persecution from occurring was to have said something along the lines of, Jesus didn't really come back from the grave. We saw his spirit, or it was his personality that was still with us. But no, they preached a physical resurrection.
Yes, because that's how they understood celestial beings at the time. But that doesn't mean that their hallucinations or anything else they would have experienced was actually a resurrection. I did see in the chat somebody say that Paul is a fictional character. There's no real good reason to think that. Just putting that out there. As far as we know, there's one author that penned 7 of Paul's epistles, and he names himself Paul. So regardless of whether or not his actual name was Paul or Saul or whatever in the fuck he wants to call himself, it doesn't matter. What matters is that the one person that wrote all 7 of Paul's authentic epistles identifies himself as Paul. He was not a fictional character in that the author didn't exist.
And they died for preaching that physical resurrection of Christ. As one Bible scholar stated, he said, while men may die out of religious deception, they do not willingly go to their deaths knowing they are perpetrating a hoax.
I completely disagree with this. There's no way that you can make this kind of judgment about the apostles and their reasons for committing as hard as they did to their belief. I think that they sincerely believed that Jesus resurrected. But I also think that they sincerely believed, like Paul and Peter, that the only apostles that we really know about, I feel like they sincerely believed in Jesus' resurrection. And it's because they had these hallucinatory visions and they read the scriptures. So they felt like they knew that this had happened. So even if they had been given a chance to repent, and even if they refused to repent and they died because of it, it doesn't matter because they wholly believed in this. Also, he's not indicating who said this. And it's actually an author that he later ascribes to a different quote, but it's like, I don't know, Walter Jackson or Ryan Jackson or something like that. He's going to say it here in a second. But the only reference that I could find to this particular quote is in a book Kyle Butt wrote himself. How many times do you have to shoot yourself in the fucking ass? Right? I mean, it's amazing to me.
What he simply meant by that was the apostles saw Jesus' resurrected body. They preached Jesus' resurrection in the flesh, and they died for that preaching. Do you know why? because they understood they would get a resurrected body like their Lord had received.
And how in the fuck does this prove that Jesus actually resurrected? The only thing that I heard out of that was that these people believed this thing and they were fully convinced in that thing. And so they died being fully convinced of that thing. That doesn't mean that that thing actually happened in reality or happened in history. Fuck you, bitch. Sorry. I got a little carried away there. This is my bad.